The alien woman dangled, bound to the hull of the massive Xylothian warship, her arms stretched above her head, wrists locked in energy shackles. The sleek metal surface of the vessel reflected the dim glow of distant stars, and the eerie hum of the ship's reactor pulsed through the void of space. She was barely conscious, her body battered and weak, her once proud golden armor torn away, leaving only rags clinging to her violet-hued skin. She had been a warrior, a commander, a leader of her people, until the Xylothians took her, until they made her a symbol of their victory. They paraded her like a trophy, a warning to all who dared oppose them. And now, for the first time in months, someone had seen her. Captain Elias Rourke gritted his teeth as he peered through the scope of his ship's long-range scanners. His pulse quickened. The Xylothians had always been brutal, but this, strapping a living being to the hull of their own warship, that was beyond cruelty. His ship, the Iron Will, was hidden in a debris field, engines cold, running dark to avoid detection. His crew, hardened veterans of the Terran resistance, stood by, waiting for his order. They had no love for the Xylothians. Humanity had been at war with them for over a decade, fighting tooth and nail just to survive. But this, Rourke couldn't let this stand. "Commander Idris," he called out, his voice a low growl. The tall, dark-skinned woman at his side turned sharply. "Sir," he pointed at the hollow display. "That's a prisoner strapped to their hull. Alive." Her brows furrowed. Xylothian cruelty at its finest. "Do we have an ID?" Rourke's fingers danced over the console, enhancing the image. A name flashed onto the screen, pulled from the Iron Will's database. "Commander Talvanna of the Solari Dominion," he read aloud. The crew fell silent. The Solari Dominion had been humanity's reluctant allies in this war. Powerful warriors, stubborn, untrusting, but not enemies. Until now, Rourke had never seen one up close. He studied her. Sharp features, eyes barely open, body limp but still breathing. Even in her weakened state, she looked fierce. Proud, defiant. They hadn't broken her. Not yet. Idris exhaled sharply. "Sir, we have our orders. Avoid direct engagement. We're outnumbered and outgunned." Rourke clenched his jaw. "Orders be damned. Get me a strike team," he said. "We're getting her out of there." The room buzzed with tension. A suicide mission, no doubt, but nobody objected. They were Terrans, and they never left anyone behind. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The iron will cut through the void like a silent predator, skimming the edge of the Xylothian warship's sensor range. They had only one shot at this. Rourke and his team suited up, weapons prepped, minds focused. They were going in fast and hard. As the airlock cycled open, Rourke glanced at the image of Talvanna one last time. Hold on, he thought. He was coming for her. The iron will moved in silent, calculated precision, hugging the Xylothian warship's blind spots. Rourke's pulse pounded in his ears as he stood in the airlock with his strike team, 5 of his best, all clad in dark EVA suits, weapons strapped to their backs. This was madness, but humanity had never survived by playing it safe. 30 seconds to breach. Idris's voice crackled through the comms. "You'll have 5 minutes, max, before their patrols pick up the anomaly." Rourke acknowledged, with a sharp nod. 5 minutes to cut Talvanna loose and get the hell out. The exterior hatch hissed open, revealing the cold abyss of space. Rourke took the first step, pushing off into the void with practiced ease. His mag boots activated the moment he made contact with the enemy hull. One by one, his team followed, their suits blending with the blackness, moving like ghosts across the warship's surface. The closer they got to Talvanna, the more grotesque the scene became. Her body was bruised and cut, her once shining violet skin marred by darkened welts. Her chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, but she was still alive. Rourke crouched beside her, his fingers brushing against the alien restraints that held her in place. They were fused to the hull, an intentional, sadistic display. She stirred, her cracked lips parting, golden eyes fluttering open just enough to register his presence. Confusion flickered in them, followed by something else. Recognition. "You're human," she rasped, her voice weak but steady. Rourke smirked. "And you're a long way from home." He unholstered his plasma cutter, slicing into the restraints. The moment the first one snapped, Talvanna let out a ragged breath, her body sagging. Rourke caught her before she could drift away, anchoring her against him. "Stay with me, Commander," he murmured. "We're getting you out of here." Alarms flared across the Xylothian warship's surface, bathing them in an ominous red glow. "Shit," one of his men cursed. "We're out of time." Rourke hoisted Talvanna against him. "Move. Back to the ship, now." The team pivoted, sprinting back toward the extraction point, mag boots clanking against the hull. Talvanna's weight slowed him down, but he didn't let go. Bolts of energy streaked past them as Xylothian defense drones activated, spitting deadly blue plasma into the void. Covering fire, Idris barked over comms. The Iron Will's cannons roared to life, blasting apart the nearest drones. Rourke pushed harder, his breath coming in sharp, burning gasps. Just a little farther. Talvanna's fingers curled weakly into his suit. "Why?" she whispered. He gritted his teeth. "Because we don't leave good people to die." They reached the airlock, just as more drones swarmed from the warship's underbelly. The doors slammed shut, sealing them inside as the ship lurched into high-speed evasive maneuvers. They had her. Now they just had to survive the escape. The Iron Will shuddered violently as enemy fire raked across its hull. The Xylothian warship was awake now, its turrets spitting streams of burning plasma, determined to obliterate them before they could flee. Rourke barely had time to register the impact before he was thrown against the bulkhead. His arms tightened around Talvanna, shielding her as the ship's artificial gravity recalibrated. "Engines at max burn," Idris shouted over the comms. "We need to outrun their targeting systems." Rourke ignored the chaos around him and focused on the Solari woman in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, her golden eyes half-lidded as she fought to stay conscious. She needed medical attention, fast. "Med Bay, now!" he barked to one of his men. A soldier, Reynolds, rushed forward, taking Talvanna from his grasp with surprising gentleness. She groaned weakly as he hoisted her over his shoulder and sprinted down the corridor. "Shields at 40%, Idris reported grimly. "We can't take another direct hit like that." Rourke moved toward the cockpit, gripping the back of the pilot's chair. "Get us into FDL. Now." The pilot, a wiry man named Kovacs, gritted his teeth. "They've got a disruptor field up. We need distance before we can jump." Another blast rocked the ship, sending sparks raining from the overhead panels. The stench of burning circuits filled the air. "Then give me options," Rourke snarled. Idris's fingers danced over the tactical console. "There's an asteroid belt 2 clicks ahead. If we thread through, we might shake them long enough to spool the FDL drive." Rourke didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Iron Will veered sharply, plunging toward the dense field of tumbling rock and debris. The Xylothians followed, their weapons still hammering away. The entire ship trembled as it weaved through the chaotic mess, dodging chunks of ice and stone the size of buildings. Kovacs grunted as he yanked the controls, narrowly avoiding a jagged spire of rock. "This is insane. You're still alive, aren't you?" Rourke shot back. A particularly large asteroid loomed ahead, slowly rotating, its cratered surface illuminated by the glow of distant stars. Idris saw it too. "That thing's dense enough to block their scanners for a few seconds. If we use it as cover." "Do it," Rourke ordered. The Iron Will dove into the asteroid's shadow, engines flaring before cutting power completely. The silence was deafening. The ship drifted, hidden in the cold void, while the Xylothians thundered past, their sensors blind to the human vessel tucked in the rock's embrace. "FDL ready in 10 seconds, Kovacs whispered. Rourke exhaled. "As soon as it's online, jump us the hell out of here." The moment the countdown hit 0, the ship surged forward, space twisting around it. The Xylothians had lost their trophy. And now, Rourke needed to figure out what the hell to do with a rescued Solari commander. The iron will shuddered one last time as it slipped into the safety of faster-than-light travel, leaving the Xylothians behind. The ship's interior was eerily silent, save for the hum of the engines and the occasional flicker of damaged systems recalibrating. Rourke let out a slow breath, forcing himself to unclench his fists. They had done it. Against all odds, they had snatched Commander Talvanna from the jaws of the enemy. But now came the hard part. He turned on his heel and strode toward the med bay, his boots echoing down the metal corridors. His crew gave him nods of respect as he passed, but he barely registered them. His mind was fixed on one thing, making sure their new passenger lived. The med bay doors hissed open. Inside, Reynolds stood by the examination table where Talvanna lay. A soft blue light bathed her weakened form, the ship's automedic scanning her injuries. The Solari woman looked small beneath the medical instruments, but Rourke knew better. She wasn't fragile, just battered. Dr. Vasquez, the ship's medic, glanced up from her tablet. She's stable for now. Severe dehydration, bruised ribs, lacerations. Nothing life-threatening, but she's been through hell. Rourke stepped closer. Talvanna's golden eyes were open, watching him. She looked less dazed than before, though exhaustion still clung to her features. He crossed his arms. "You're lucky we saw you." Her gaze didn't waver. "I didn't ask for your help." Rourke let out a dry chuckle. "No, but you damn well needed it." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Talvanna exhaled, her voice quieter this time. Why would a human risk his life for me?" Rourke studied her for a moment before answering. "Because I know what the Xylothians do to their prisoners. And because, for all the politics and war, you weren't my enemy up there. You were just someone left to die." She closed her eyes for a second, as if absorbing his words. When she looked at him again, something in her expression had softened just slightly. "You are different from the others I've fought," she murmured. Rourke shrugged. "I get that a lot." Vasquez sighed. "She needs rest. And hydration. You can interrogate her later, Captain." Talvanna's lips twitched at that, almost an attempt at a smirk. Rourke nodded. "Fine. But you're not a prisoner here, Talvanna. We'll get you somewhere safe." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment before she finally closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her under. As Rourke turned to leave, Idris's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, you need to get to the bridge. Now." His gut tightened. What now? He took one last glance at the sleeping Solari warrior before striding out the door. Because something told him this rescue was just the beginning, Rourke stormed onto the bridge, his jaw tight. Idris stood by the central holo display, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The rest of the crew worked frantically at their stations. Tension thick in the air. "What's the situation?" Rourke demanded. Idris turned to him, her expression grim. "FTL sensors picked something up. We're being tracked." Rourke's stomach dropped. "Impossible. The Xylothians lost us." "Maybe," Kovacs muttered from the pilot's chair. "But something's on our tail. It's not standard Xylothian tech." He pulled up a tactical display, showing a faint energy signature trailing behind them in the vast darkness of space. "It's stealthy. Whatever it is, it's not broadcasting any known signals." Rourke studied the readout, his mind racing. Could be a drone, or something worse. "Something Solari," Idris said quietly. Rourke's head snapped toward her. "You think her people are tracking us?" Idris nodded. "Makes sense. If Talvanna is as important as the Xylothians made her out to be, the Solari would want her back. And they might not be happy that we have her." Rourke cursed under his breath. The Solari were humanity's uneasy allies in this war, but trust between them was paper-thin. If they thought the Ironwood had taken Talvanna hostage instead of rescuing her, this could turn bad fast. Kovacs drummed his fingers on the console. We can't outrun them forever. We need a plan. Rourke exhaled sharply. Drop us out of FTL. Let's see what we're dealing with. Kovacs hesitated, then nodded. The iron will groan as it decelerated, stars stretching and snapping back into focus. Silence followed, no gunfire, no immediate attack. Then, the tracker ship revealed itself. A sleek, dagger-like vessel shimmered into view just beyond their bow, its hull glistening with dark blue alloys. It was unmistakably Solari, a scout-class warship, fast and deadly. "They're hailing us," Idris reported. Rourke clenched his fists. "Put them through." The hollow display flickered, revealing a Solari male with sharp, predatory features. His silver eyes were cold, calculating. He wore the insignia of a high-ranking officer. "I am Commander Varesh of the Solari Dominion," he said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "You are in possession of something that does not belong to you." Rourke met his gaze evenly. "If you're talking about Talvana, she's alive. Thanks to us." Varesh's expression didn't change. "You will transfer her to us immediately. If you refuse, we will take her by force." Idris tensed beside Rourke. No gratitude. Typical. Rourke ignored her and kept his voice level. "She's injured. If you want her alive, we do this on my terms. No threats." Varesh's eyes darkened. "You misunderstand, Captain. That was not a threat." The hollow feed cut. "Shields up." Idris barked. Outside, the Solari warship's weapons began to charge. The moment the hollow feed cut, alarms blared through the iron will. The Solari warship's weapons were fully powered, their targeting systems locking onto Rourke's ship. "Shields up," Idris shouted, her fingers flying across the console. "They're not bluffing, Captain." Rourke gritted his teeth. He had expected hostility, but this was a whole new level. The Solari weren't even trying to talk, just issuing demands. "Are they charging weapons, or is this just intimidation?" he asked. Kovacs checked his readout. "They're holding fire, but if we make the wrong move, they'll light us up." Rourke exhaled sharply. "Open a channel again." A second later, Varesh's face reappeared, his expression unreadable. "You're making a mistake," Rourke said, his voice calm but firm. "We're not your enemies." Varesh's silver eyes narrowed. "You took what belongs to the Dominion. That is an act of aggression." "She's not cargo," Rourke snapped. "She's a person. We risked our lives to get her off that Xylothian warship." For the first time, something flickered in Varesh's gaze. It wasn't gratitude, but maybe, just maybe, hesitation. A weak voice interrupted them. "Varesh, stand down." Rourke turned. Talvana stood in the med bay's doorway, leaning against the frame for support. She was still pale, still weak, but her golden eyes burned with authority. The hollow display flickered as Varesh saw her. "Commander," he said, his tone shifting ever so slightly. "I am not a prisoner," she said, lifting her chin. "The humans saved me." A tense silence followed. Varesh's fingers twitched, his jaw clenching. Then, finally, he exhaled. "Very well." The energy readings on the iron will's console flickered. Solari weapons were powering down. Talvana straightened. "Allow me to speak with them, Varesh." Varesh hesitated, then nodded once. "I will await your decision." The feed cut out. Rourke folded his arms. "You've got some loyal friends." Talvana turned to him, something unreadable in her gaze. "Loyal, yes. But trust? That is another matter." She took a slow breath. "I owe you my life, Captain Rourke, and I do not take such debts lightly." Rourke arched a brow. "Sounds like you have a decision to make." She nodded. "Yes, and whatever I choose, it will change everything." The tension in the air was thick as Talvana stepped further into the bridge, her movements slow but deliberate. Every eye was on her, waiting. She had the power to end the standoff, or turn it into a bloodbath. Rourke watched her carefully. Despite her injuries, She carried herself with the dignity of a warrior. There was no fear in her golden eyes, only calculation. "You trust Varesh?" he asked. Tal Vanna's expression didn't change. "I trust that he will follow orders, but I do not trust his judgment." Rourke smirked. "Sounds familiar." She tilted her head, studying him. "And you? If our roles were reversed, would you return me to your people so easily?" Rourke exhaled. "That depends. Are they going to thank me or shoot me?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips, but it vanished just as quickly. "I must speak with Varesh." Alone, Idris shifted uncomfortably. "Not happening." Rourke held up a hand. "It's fine." He turned to Tal Vanna. "But no tricks. If you decide to stay with them, you go. If you try anything else," his voice trailed off, letting the unspoken warning hang between them. Tal Vanna nodded once. "Understood." Idris hesitated but relayed the command. The hollow display flickered back to life, revealing Varesh's stern face. "Commander," he greeted. Tal Vanna straightened. "You will not fire upon this vessel." A pause. Then, "That depends on your next words." Tal Vanna's jaw tightened. "The humans saved me. I will not see them punished for it." Varesh's gaze flicked past her to Rourke. "They took you from Xylothian hands, yes. But you are still Solari. You belong with us." Tal Vanna's fingers curled into fists. "And if I do not?" Varesh's silence spoke volumes. Rourke watched the exchange, resisting the urge to intervene. This was her battle. Finally, Varesh spoke. "You know the consequences." Tal Vanna's face was unreadable. Then, slowly, she turned to Rourke. "I will go with them." A part of Rourke had expected it, but it still landed like a punch to the gut. Tal Vanna stepped forward, her voice softer now. "I owe you my life, Captain, and for that, I will ensure no harm comes to you or your crew." Rourke nodded. "I'll hold you to that." The calm cut, and Tal Vanna took a breath. "This war is far from over, Rourke, and something tells me this isn't the last time we'll meet." He smirked. "I'll bet on that." She stepped toward the airlock, and just like that, she was gone. The iron will remain in tense silence long after Tal Vanna's departure. The Solari warship drifted away, its sleek frame vanishing into the darkness, leaving Rourke and his crew alone once more. Idris exhaled, rubbing a hand down her face. "Well, that could have gone worse." Kovac snorted. "Yeah? We just handed over the one person who might have actually been grateful we saved her. Feels like a raw deal." Rourke leaned against the console, staring at the empty void where the Solari ship had been moments before. A part of him agreed. They had risked everything to save Tal Vanna, and now she was back in the hands of people who might see her more as an asset than a person. But another part of him knew she had made the only choice she could. "She had to go," he said finally. "Staying with us would have made her a traitor to her people." Idris folded her arms. "And do you think they'll actually honor her promise? That they won't come gunning for us next time?" Rourke thought about Varesh's cold stare, his barely concealed disdain for humans. "No," he admitted, "but she will." That was the difference. Tal Vanna was bound by honor, something he could respect. But Varesh? He was the type to hold a grudge. "Set a course away from this sector," Rourke ordered. "We've kicked enough hornet nests for one day." Kovacs nodded and began plotting a new jump route. But before he could engage the drive, an alert flashed across the console. Captain, we've got a problem." Rourke's stomach tightened. "What now?" Kovacs swore under his breath. "There's a Xylothian signal nearby. Big one." He turned, eyes wide. "It's not just a patrol. This is a damn war fleet." The bridge fell into stunned silence. Rourke felt the weight of it all crash down at once. The Solari were gone, but the Xylothians weren't. And if they were moving in force, it wasn't a coincidence. They were tracking her, Idris said quietly. Rourke clenched his jaw. Tal Vanna was never the only target. The Xylothians wanted her back, and now they knew exactly where to look ***. Battle stations, he ordered, his voice grim. We're not out of this yet. The Iron Will powered up its defenses as the Xylothian war fleet closed in. Rourke's pulse pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. Running wasn't an option, not this time. Options, he barked. Idris's fingers flew across the console. We can't outrun them, but we might not have to. That Solari warship is still in range. Rourke's eyes narrowed. You think Talvana will help? Idris shrugged. She said she owed us. Rourke didn't hesitate. Send a distress call. Tell her we're about to be vaporized. Seconds passed. The Xylothians charged their weapons. Then, the void tore open. The Solari ship reappeared, weapons blazing. Plasma fire ripped through the Xylothian ranks, catching them off guard. The battlefield erupted in chaos. A message flashed onto Rourke's screen, one line from Talvana. Debt repaid. Rourke grinned. Damn right. The Iron will seize the opportunity, engines roaring to life. They cut through the chaos, escaping into FTL just as the battle reached its peak. As the stars stretched before them, Rourke leaned back, exhaling. Idris smirked. Told you she'd come through? Rourke chuckled. Yeah, but something tells me this isn't the last time we cross paths. And deep down, he hoped he was right.